All right. I am getting the signal to go ahead and get started. So, good morning. My name is Craig Souza, and I'll get into a longer introduction later. But what I want to do first is really get you talking to each other. So, for those who are just joining, I'm assuming everybody is a Zoom expert. But this is our Zoom panel. Please use the chat in Zoom, not the chat on the portal, the Out and Equal portal, because I'm not looking at it. So if you send a chat in that on the Out and Equal Pathable website, I won't see it. So please use the Zoom chat, and if you open up the participant list, you'll be able to see who else is in the class. Breakout rooms, you will be Zoom is upgraded, so now I can actually set it up where you'll just automatically be transported into the breakout room. So you shouldn't have to push a button to join a breakout room. And again, for those just joining, an optimal experience is if you put your Zoom into side-by-side mode. So first, what I'm going to do is we're going to put you into pairs or triads. It'll probably just be pairs because we have just about 84 folks that are in the class right now. So we're going to go into breakout rooms. Let's see. So 84 people. So we're up to 74. Okay, so we will have between 2 and 3 participants in the room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and you can just simply talk about these 2 topics. What discoveries have you made at Out and Equal this year? And as you go back to your work and your life, what are some of the greatest challenges that you face right now? And so let me set up the time. All right. So I'm going to hit open all rooms, and then off you will go and be magically transported to the breakout rooms. So again, what discoveries have you made at Out and Equal this year? And what are some of your biggest challenges? And I'll see you back in 5 minutes. Hello, Tane. Andy. Welcome back, everyone. All right. All right. Welcome back. So let's take a few comments in the chat. So what showed up as discoveries that you've made at Out and Equal this year? And what are some of your biggest challenges? And maybe if there's a couple of folks who would like to get your voice out into the room and share live, please raise your hand in the participants tab, and we can take just a couple of live comments. Any brave souls want to raise their hand? Just getting started. I know. That's one of the things. It's the worst part of the Zoom experience is. All right. So Curtis, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Perfect. Hi, Curtis here in Toronto, and thanks for this opportunity. It was a great way to start the session and get to know our colleagues here. And I was with Delaney from San Diego, and yeah, it was great. Some of the sessions she had attended was on transgender and people sharing their personal stories. That was very insightful and impactful. we use the word soulful when we're hearing these voices and these sessions. For me, it was learning more about being a better ally, Black Lives Matter and areas. So yeah, and of course, we talked about our new reality of all being connected virtually as well right now.
Yeah, it's a little bizarre. Thank you, Curtis.
Yes.
Alex, and then we'll have to move on.
Good morning, everyone. I am in Salt Lake City, Utah, and probably my biggest discovery at Out Inkle this year is just the theme of we are so good at understanding our lane or our letter in our gender identity, and it's our responsibility to educate ourselves and find the resources about how we can be an ally and support the other letters in LGBTQ+. And it's that theme I've seen in a lot of the sessions, and it's kind of been like a personal call to action, and just also the realization that there's so many others that are in, for lack of a better word, their own rowboat, and we're all comfortable with our letter, but maybe not with the others. And so just that discovery and that challenge of it's time to learn, and it's time to ask questions, and it's time to be an ally.
Great. That's great. Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that. So, and Madeline, I just want to do a process check that we've restarted the recording now that we're back from the breakout rooms.
Yes.
So, awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, a lot of times when we come from a meeting and we're arriving in a new space, or we're at a conference and we've been out in the hallway talking to people, remember when we used to do that? And then we have to settle into a session. Having the ability to just sort of bring ourselves present can be a really good skill to have. So we're going to practice right now. This is an arrival practice, just to arrive here for our time together. So what I'd invite you to do is just find a comfortable seat, however you are. And what we're going to do is we're just simply going to connect to our breath or to our body, or just a sensation of our hands resting in our lap. And we're just going to sit for 1 minute. So just feeling the weight of your body in the chair. You can allow your eyes to close, or just look maybe down at your keyboard, or whatever is in front of you. Just bring in a long, slow, deep breath into the nose. And out. And breathing in. And out. Breathing in. And out. And as thoughts come in, gently letting them drift away. And perhaps setting an intention for this workshop. What brought you here? Is it curiosity? Perhaps you have a practice and you want to deepen it. Whatever that intention is for you. And when you're ready, opening your eyes if they were closed, coming back into the space. So that is what we call a minute to arrive, and it's actually how we start staff meetings for my group. And it's a nice way to just kind of settle and focus. And I'd love to see in the chat if anyone maybe noticed a subtle shift in your awareness or how you felt just by taking just that minute to kind of settle in to the breath. Yeah, more relaxed, helps to be more present. Yeah. Less anxious, more peaceful. Yes. Peace, more focus. Yeah. Unclench my teeth. Yeah. A lot of times when we do that, we'll just like notice that we have tension, we're carrying tension in our jaw or our shoulders, and we can allow ourselves to release that. Yeah. Hadn't realized how many competing priorities are in your mind. Yep. Exactly. So let me go ahead and introduce myself. So my name is, again, Craig Souza, and my day job is I work for HP in our management services group. I'm in sales. And then my day job is I am currently the communications chair for the Palo Alto Pride employee group. I've been involved with Pride for about a decade. And then my other job is about 2 years ago, I began the process to become a certified teacher for Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. And so today I teach a 2-day mindfulness and emotional intelligence class. I teach it at HP, I've taught it at Facebook, at UCSF School of Medicine, and I've done a bunch of these keynotes. And really, I have out and equal to blame. And so this is kind of a full circle moment, being able to do this at Out and Equal. I really love it. I found myself at Out and Equal for the first time about 10 years ago. I honestly don't remember how I heard about it, but I got involved with the Pride group at HP, and boom, I was in Dallas, Texas, listening to this woman named Celeste Berry talk about bringing your whole self to work. And at that point in my life, I didn't know if that was something I wanted. Work was the place, it was the ATM that I withdrew cash from so that I could then go have my life. But that got me curious about, wow, what would it look like for the Craig that shows up at HP to be the same Craig that directs a play, because I do theater, or shows up for my friends. And eventually, obviously, came around to the conclusion that, yeah, that would actually be kind of a cool thing. And today, that's pretty much what you see is what you get. Whether it's same Craig showing up for my friends, showing up for work, and and it feels good. In parallel to this was my developing a meditation practice, which I actually came to through the process of getting sober 24 years ago, which I'm just starting to talk about that publicly because mental health is something that is not really talked about. And I think it's important that we talk about that more. But that was really sort of my road into meditation. And then in parallel to that, there's a lot of parallel tracks. I don't know if you can have this many parallel tracks. I think you should just have 2 for a parallel. But anyway, you get my point. Is I got really interested in corporate culture because HP around 2008, 2009 was going through a lot of turmoil and sort of refinding our way. And so I got really interested in what makes a strong, sustainable corporate culture. And all of these sort of converge with Search Inside Yourself. So Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute came out of Google. So it started in 2007 in Google as an internal program, really teaching mindfulness to engineers and emotional intelligence. And it quickly became the most popular internal training program at Google. So there are huge waiting lists. And then in 2012, a lot of folks had left Google. They'd gone to other companies. They wanted to bring the program in. And so they were like, hey, Google, can we have this? Can we use this? And so in 2012, Google basically took this program and spun it off as a separate independent nonprofit called the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. So Google remains a big customer of Search Inside Yourself, but it's no longer a part of Google. So it's a separate institute. So companies like Google, SAP, HP, Facebook are bringing these trainings into their organizations. The pillars of the program are, first off, is emotional intelligence. So this is built around Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence framework, which we're going to get into. And also because it came out of Google, I forgot to turn off my other phone. That was bad. Put that on airplane mode. And because it came out of Google, there's a lot of the science integrated into this. So neuroscientist named Philippe Goldman was one of the people who helped start the program. And so it's really taking a look at getting under the hood of how does our brain work? How does our central nervous system work? And then how do we use the tool of mindfulness to actually develop these EI competencies and be able to notice, when is our body or our mind or our emotions doing certain things, and helping to build that awareness. So this is the EI framework. For those of you who may not have read the book Emotional Intelligence, it's a really good read, highly recommend it. But these are sort of the towers of emotional intelligence. So self-awareness is foundational. If we don't have self-awareness, we really can't go into any of these other towers. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. So we're basically taking just pieces and parts of a full 2-day class, and we're going to discuss self-awareness, and we're going to discuss empathy. In the middle of that is self-management. How do we manage our emotions? This is very relevant today, especially as we move into kind of the COVID world. Motivation, which is not just a Porsche, which is how we tend to, sometimes we think about motivation in our materialistic culture. It's more about what actually has meaning for me. What's really going to get me excited about getting out of bed and going to work. Empathy, which is awareness of others. And then social skills, which SIY, Search Inside Yourself, frames as leadership. So how do we show up as a leader? And an important distinction, when I use the word leader, if you're like HP, you might think, oh, it's my level 1, or it's my level 2, or it's the C-suite. A leader, as we define it in SIY, is anyone who has influence over another person. So we all have influence over others. So that can be our coworker, that can be our partner, it can be children, spouse, or just the person that we're nice to or not when we're checking out our groceries. An interesting thing to do, this is something I did for HP with the HP Way, and then Isabel and I worked together to do this for Out and Equal, is aligning the emotional towers to your company mission. So if you look at mindfulness being the foundation of Out and Equal would be global workplaces where all people are equal, belong, and thrive. So we're going to talk about bringing our attention back. So again, how do we always bring our attention back to not just our personal mission, but also our organizational mission? And then we can look at how do we align self-awareness, authenticity, and belonging. Being strong and forward-looking, that falls into the self-management tower. Supporting employees and leaders to thrive would be motivation. Equality and belonging is all about empathy. How do we create everybody in cultures? So that's one of our HP terms, where we don't really talk about, we don't call our unconscious bias training unconscious bias anymore. It's now belong at HP. It's really about how do we create these cultures of belonging where people feel seen and they're a part of. And then we really look at leadership. So this is great, Craig. Yeah, I want to be mindful. I want to be emotionally intelligent, but this is my life. I've got multiple inputs coming at me. And so it's a little hard to be mindful. And then, oh, by the way, starting about February, things started to get worse. Oh, and then we had, all the George Floyd, Black Lives Matter protests, and then RBG, and can I get a break, right? Can I have one less opportunity for personal growth, please? Is how many of us are feeling right now. And so a lot of us are sort of feeling, isolated and kind of questioning, okay, what's next? where do I fit and how do I make sense of this? So if there's anyone who loves their acronyms more than HP or Boeing or corporate America in general, it is the military. And the U.S. Army War College came up with a fun one to describe the post-Cold War order. It was VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I've been seeing this acronym coming up a lot in different PowerPoint presentations over the last 9 months. It's been getting a lot of traction because this is our world, right? And so how do we focus? So at the best of times, this program was developed obviously long before COVID. There was a lot of work around how do we get people to focus. So this was a study that was done by the Mindful Leadership Institute, and it was done at General Mills, and they were looking at managers and directors. And what they found when they talked to people is that for most folks, about half of their time is spent mind wandering. Now, mind wandering is wonderful if you're just trying to innovate or go for a walk in the woods. It can actually be a very useful tool, but if we're trying to get things done, it can be less useful. This was a really depressing statistic, is 70% of leaders reported they couldn't pay attention in meetings. So how many of us have maybe been in a meeting with one of those leaders, right? Oh, hey, sorry, Craig, I was multitasking. Can you repeat that? Really important thing that I should have listened to. So this is just sort of what we're dealing with. And we all know we need to fix it, right? We need to be more focused. We need to do time blocking to check email and just spend half an hour a day on email. But only about 2% of us actually take time to do it. So the result of all this is we're running on autopilot. So what does autopilot look like? So autopilot looks like our attention is either in the past. Oh, wow, I really wish that last meeting had gone better, or I wish I'd paid attention, or it's in the future. Gee, I wonder how my workshop is going to go tomorrow at Out and Equal. We're distracted, we're less aware, and we're simply acting based on habit patterns and assumptions. So we're just reacting. This is another quote I've been seeing on a lot of slides in the last 9 months. It is attributed to Viktor Frankl, but it's actually Stephen Covey summarizing Viktor Frankl's work. So Stephen Covey was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People person. And I love this. So this, to me, if there's one thing that you're going to print out, because we encourage people to print at HP, and hang up on your wall or where you can see it, it would be this quote, because this to me captures the entire point of mindfulness. So between stimulus and response, there is space. So between stimulus, an email coming in telling me I'm not going to get what I want, and my response, damn right, I'm going to get what I want, and to make sure I'm going to copy your manager and my manager, and I'm going to copy our director too, and send. And then you go, ooh, should I have done that? Right? Between stimulus and response, there is space. In that space lies our power to choose our response. In that response lies our growth and our freedom. So to me, one of the key points of mindfulness and emotional intelligence is giving ourselves a little more space so that we can make better decisions. So we can really more skillfully respond to life and to the stimuli that are hitting us and to our emotions. So how do we get off autopilot? Well, mindfulness has worked well enough for me that I'm making a career pivot to share it with others. So we're going to be talking about mindfulness. And if you talk to that there's mindfulness is out there in the zeitgeist right now. Everything's talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. There's a lot of different definitions. The one we're going to work with today is simply being aware. So mindfulness is being aware, like someone in the chat talked about when we just did that brief little minute to arrive, noticing that my jaw is clenched. Noticing that I'm thinking about 28 different things other than this meeting that I'm in right now. So mindfulness, really think about it as moving from being on autopilot to being aware. So the first thing we're going to talk about is self-awareness. So self-awareness is, without that, we can't have empathy for others. So science actually tells us that. So when we see someone in pain, the part of our brain that actually registers pain lights up. So without that self-awareness, we actually can't have empathy. So it's super important. So one thing that I hope you all leave with are just some practical tools that you can immediately put to use. So this is a micro practice for self-awareness. And actually, I was actually deeply touched, to tell you the truth, when Annette Friskop, who's our global executive sponsor, shared with me this morning that she used my 3 breaths. It's actually SIYLI's 3 breaths before she did her keynote talk for Out and Equal. And so this is really a way to just kind of settle and get into our body and become aware of how we are being in this moment. So let's go ahead and try it. So if you have anything in your hands, you can just go ahead and set that down. And I'm going to talk you through 3 breaths. And in the first breath, all you're going to do is pay full, gentle attention to the breath. See if you can actually notice a full cycle of breath. The breath in, the pause between the in-breath and the out-breath, and the out-breath. With the second breath, relax the body. See if you can notice where there's some tension in your body. Maybe it's tension in your jaw, your shoulders. That's where I carry my tension. And see if you can release that one small measure. And with the third breath, gently holding the question, what's important right now? So let's go ahead and do that. So with our first breath, we're just simply paying full, gentle attention to the breath. With the second breath, we relax the body, one small measure. And with that third breath, we ask, what's important right now? This can be a useful practice to start meetings. So Annette actually had told me she was starting her staff meetings with this practice. And it was really interesting because then when you'd ask people what showed up for you as what's most important right now, it may not have been on the agenda, but it's what's most important right now. A lot of people will also use this. This can be great because now our home life and our work life and all of our life is happening within the same 4 walls. So this can also be a very useful practice to shift from one thing to the next. We're saying, all right, I'm going to move away from my workspace to time with my family or my kids or my friends. This can be a nice way to kind of shift gears. Let's talk a little bit about the research. So a lot of the research into the neuroscience of mindfulness began with people who were students of psychology for the most part, who became meditation practitioners and got interested in, wow, I wonder what our brains do when we meditate. And fMRI technology was coming out, and so they went, hey, let's put some Tibetan monks in scanners and see what their brains look like compared to grad students. And the field of neuroscientific research was born. This field is relatively new. So PubMed it basically tracks academic journals. What are people researching? What are people writing about? So if you had gone to PubMed in 1990, you would have had to have worked for a research institution to do that because the internet was just coming out, and you typed in mindfulness, you probably would have gotten half a dozen hits at most. If you went into it, in 2019, you would have gotten a lot more. to put it, the last time I looked was probably a couple months ago. I typed mindfulness into PubMed, which is publicly available. If you want to geek out on science studies, you can go there. There were a little over 5,000 hits for mindfulness. To put it in perspective, if you type in bipolar depression, there were 55,000 hits. So this research is still in its infancy, but it's pointing towards a few really important things. The first is this notion of neuroplasticity, right? So what we think and do and think about can literally change the chemistry and structure of our brains. So this was a study done by Judson Brewer at Yale. And so they were really looking at changes in attention and mind wandering, parts of the brain related to attention training and mind wandering in experienced meditation practitioners and naive controls. So these are mostly graduate students. And so one thing that they discovered when they were putting people in brain scanners waiting for the experiment to start was this part of the brain that was lighting up that they called the default mode network. So that's the part of our brain related to self-referential thinking. Yeah, I'm thinking about myself, I'm thinking about what you think about me, and it's also a part of the brain correlated to unhappiness. So, and they found that it was less active during meditation, and in both naive controls and experienced meditators, but in experienced meditators, it was less active at rest. The other thing they saw was greater connectivity between the attention management regions of the brain, our prefrontal cortex, our thinking brain, and experienced meditators. So there were actually neural differences that they saw in the brain. So this was an interesting study from Lutz, I think, University of Wisconsin, I think was where this was done. And this is really looking at anticipatory stress and recovery. So one of the key folks who helped develop SIY was John Kabat-Zinn, who is sort of one of the fathers of mindfulness-based stress reduction. And one of the key tenets of that and of a lot of ancient meditation practices is if we actually turn towards suffering or pain, we can actually change our relationship to it, which goes against a lot of our natural instincts, right? We want to move away from pain, we want to move away from suffering and towards pleasure. But meditation practice is actually turning towards. A friend of mine's getting knee surgery and he's actually doing MBSR right now. And he was like, yeah, that's actually what I'm doing. Yeah, they're telling me to actually focus on the pain instead of ignoring it. So this is looking at this so this experiment looked at that. The way they did that was they actually put these thermodes on people's wrists that would actually heat up and give people a sensation of sharp pain. And they were looking at the amygdala response. So the amygdala is the oldest part of our brain. It's the part of our brain that processes threats. It's the fight, flight, freeze part. A lot of folks have heard of that. And they were looking at anticipatory stress, how people actually responded to pain and recovery time. What they found is that if you look in where you have this kind of bar chart on the left, is anticipatory amygdala reaction. And the blue is the naive controls. So these are the folks who are in the scanner, they know they're going to get hurt, and their amygdala, their pain matrix is already lit up. They're bracing for impact. The experienced meditators they're not in pain right now. In the present moment, they're fine. So they don't have this sort of brace for impact stress going on. Here's the bad news. You can meditate for 20,000 hours. Pain is going to hurt just as much as it does someone who's had 18 hours of meditation training. But this is really interesting, and this goes to resilience, is the experienced meditators afterwards reported less unpleasantness and returned to baseline a lot quicker. Whereas the grad students were going, why did I do that? That was so not worth $50, that hurt. And we're still in that space. So a lot of this is how do we pay attention to the present moment so we're not bracing for impact, and how do we return to baseline quicker? So this is actually very recent data. So this is from 2020. So I'm going to be actually looking at the slides while I read this because I don't have these statistics memorized. But this is really looking at changes after people going through the 2-day program and looking at them 28 days after the program. So there's a pre-survey that people take looking at certain measures of mindfulness and emotional intelligence. And then there's a 28-day challenge after the class. And then we test again and look at these same measures. And what we noticed is that pause, the Viktor Frankl pause between stimulus and response, about a 20% increase in being able to take a pause before reacting. Being able to notice when our attention has been pulled. That's a lot of times our attention is drifted off, but we don't even notice. We could be off in another world for 5 minutes, like making a speech that no one's ever going to hear before we notice, oh, wait, I need to get back to this thing. When in conflict with someone, I take time to fully understand what is driving their perspective. So a measurable increase in that. So that's a measure for empathy. So that's the good news. And the important takeaway in all of this is that emotional intelligence is trainable. It's like any other skill that we can develop. Let me do a time check on myself. Okay. So let's talk about practices. So we have both integrated and dedicated practices. So the way to think about this is, if we want to get into, if we want to increase our health, so maybe we park our car at the far corner of the mall parking lot. Remember when we could go to malls and we get a few extra steps in, or we take the stairs instead of the elevator. And then a dedicated practice is, I'm going to get a gym membership and I'm going to spend 45 minutes lifting weights or on the pre-core. And so that is a dedicated practice. So what we're going to do now is I'm actually going to walk you through a focused attention practice. And so this is actually a dedicated practice to increase that skill of mindfulness and to notice where our attention has wandered. The way we're going to do that is we're going to be following a focal point. So we're going to use the breath. The breath doesn't work for everyone, especially people who've experienced trauma, specifically trauma in their bodies. Breath can actually not be calming at all. So just know that if you are one of those people, that when I talk about focus on the breath, you can change that in your mind. For me, actually, what works a lot of times is the sensation of my hands resting on my jeans, just feeling the fabric of my clothing on the palms of my hands. It can be the sound of my laptop fan or the birds outside my window. I'm really lucky. I've got a nice garden with lots of birds in it. So it can be a body sensation, it can be a sound. So breath doesn't have to be the focal point of an attention training process. So that's very important. So just note that. And so we begin, we're following the breath. Yay, I'm meditating. And then distraction comes in. So how many of you, just kind of show of hands if you have your webcam on, have a story around, oh, I can't meditate because I keep thinking, right? Thoughts come in, right? So if your goal of being a good meditator is to stop your thoughts, well, good luck. If you try to stop your thoughts, the only thing you're going to wind up with is a headache. So the point of meditation is when the distraction comes in, we notice the distraction. So the name of the game is not to stop being distracted. The name of the game is to notice, oh, I'm beginning to write a political speech, and bringing our attention back to the object. And so the practice is that. So if we think about this as lifting weights, if I want bigger biceps and I want to do bicep curls, so when I notice my attention has wandered and I bring it back to the breath, I've just built up my mindfulness muscle. So you may have to reorient your attention every half second. If you get really, really good and you do this for a few years, maybe you'll be able to go like maybe 5 or 10 whole breaths before your mind wanders. So it's really about that, is how do we notice the distraction, and then how do we bring our attention back? So what we're going to do now is I'm actually going to walk you through a mindful breathing exercise. So what I'd like to invite you to do is just go ahead and find a posture that is relaxed and yet alert. So we're not taking a nap. So we're actually going to go through an attention training process. So again, you don't want to be rigid, but ideally you want to be seated upright so your spine is straight. Checking to maybe make sure that your ears are in line with your shoulders, your chin slightly tucked. Again, this is just making sure the weight of your head is just distributed correctly. And you can maybe try rocking back and forth or forward and back. Just sort of find that alignment and that aligned position. And then noticing, is your jaw clenched? And maybe relax your jaw. Your tongue will probably naturally rest against the roof of your mouth. Just finding whatever that is for you. Just find that posture that's relaxed and supportive. The other good practice when we settle into an attention training process or meditation is to set an intention for the practice. Perhaps our intention is to have less stress. For the purposes of this workshop, maybe our intention is just curiosity. I want to see what this attention training thing is all about. And then once you've settled on that intention, simply noticing the breath. Where is the breath alive for you? Perhaps you can feel the cool air moving past your upper lip as you breathe in. Warm air moving past your upper lip on the exhale. Perhaps it's a rise and fall of your belly or your chest. And if your anchor point is something other than the breath, the sound, or the sensation of your hands on your lap, simply noticing that. Just simply bringing your attention to this focal point. For the rest of this practice, think of this sensation or sound as the stabilizer of your attention. And when your mind wanders, simply bring it back to this focal point. See if you can be curious and kind with yourself when your attention wanders. Adopting an attitude of, oh, my attention's wandered. And simply, as soon as you notice, bringing your awareness gently and kindly back to your focal point. Thoughts coming, thoughts going. There's no need to push them away or chase after them. If your attention wanders, simply returning to right here, right now. If it helps, you could try counting the breaths. With a breath in and a breath out being 1. The next cycle of breath being 2. Perhaps count up to 10 and then start back at 1. And if you lose count, just Gently starting back at 1. So let's now sit quietly for 2 minutes, making just the right amount of effort to settle your attention on this breath, or this sound, or this sensation. You have nowhere to go, nothing to do, no one to be for the next 2 minutes. Just simply sitting, being aware of whatever arises. And there's 2 minutes. So at your own pace, gently opening your eyes. Maybe you want to invite a stretch. Ooh, that felt good. Depending on how good my microphone is, you may or may not have been able to hear my neck crack just then. And I feel really grateful that my dog was quiet for that meditation. I was like, okay, this'll be when the neighbors go up the back stairs and she barks. So that did not happen. So let's take a couple of comments in the chat. So what was that like? Any comments on what was that like, or that experience, or if you have any questions? Well, I need to do this more often. What a wonderful few minutes. Yeah. And if there's anyone anyone who'd like to make a live comment. Curtis and Alex brought their voice into the room earlier. Is there anyone else who would like to just?
Craig, I can say something.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I really appreciated your comment about how those with trauma, maybe focusing on the breath isn't the best way to do that. I had never heard that before, and I hold a lot of trauma in my body, and I've always had trouble with meditation. I've known that it's something that could be really helpful for me, and I've tried mindfulness, and it's just been very difficult for me. And I hadn't been prompted to focus on something else. So I have a bracelet that I wear all the time that's connected to some of my therapy that helps with visualization for me. But I held that and focused on that, and that was really, really helpful. So thank you. That I think I might be able to be more successful with this.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Kelsey. It's super important. So SIYLI has been doing a lot of work. There's a guy, I can't remember if it's either Daniel or David, Tree 11, who does a lot of work around trauma sensitive mindfulness. And so he's been doing workshops with SIYLI. And so how do we bring some of these adjustments to make mindfulness more accessible for people dealing with trauma is a really big topic of conversation right now. Let's take one quick comment from Jesse, and then we have to move on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so mine kind of echoes Kelsey in the sense that like breathing so deeply and just so intentionally almost created a panic in my body for a minute. So I kind of needed to adjust to like focus on, you know, my hands on my legs, kind of something you had suggested, or the whirring of my laptop fan, because there was a moment there where as I was trying to remove the distracted thoughts, my body, my heart rate increased, and I started to really have like almost a physical reaction to the stillness, which I was kind of surprised by. So I don't know that I actually settled in completely, but I think if I concentrated a little bit more time, I might get there. So thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Jesse. Yeah, I mean, I can't emphasize enough the point that mindfulness is awesome. It's worked really well for me. Meditation is awesome. It's worked really well for me. You need to keep yourself safe. And so when we sit quietly with our thoughts, things come up, and those aren't always good things. And so just knowing how do we keep ourselves safe and make adjustments. So there's no one way to do this. This also falls, so I was reading an interesting article, so there's trauma and there's also having a 3-year-old. So I was reading a really interesting article about how to maintain a meditation practice with toddlers. And the answer to that was, if you've got a 3-year-old and you want to have a seated meditation practice, forget about it, it's not going to happen. But while you're feeding the child or changing the diaper, paying full and gentle attention to that thing, that can become your practice. So really looking at whatever we're doing can be that thing that becomes our object of full attention. So it doesn't necessarily have to look like sitting on a cushion. So in summary, we need some skills for this VUCA world in which we live, right? And so the key takeaway is mindfulness is, how do we move from autopilot to aware? And so what we're now going to move into is empathy. And so why does empathy matter? So, you know, Google is a very data-driven company, so is HP. I'm sure many of us work for very data-driven companies. And, you know, Google really wanted to figure out how do they create, like, what's the secret sauce to a high-performing team? And so they did this study, and they interviewed hundreds of people, and they looked at, you know, dozens of metrics across hundreds of teams, and they spent 2 years on this project called RE Work. You can actually Google it, RE-work, and it's publicly available. But they really wanted to figure out what makes the perfect team, and what they thought they would find is they would figure out, okay, we need 1 Rhodes Scholar, and we need 1 introvert and 1 extrovert and 1 engineer, and, you know, and really they wanted to figure out what's the right composition of the team. What they found is it didn't matter who was on the team. What mattered was how did that team work together. And they found 5 key things that really mattered with a high-performing team. So for people on that team to know that they had impact, that their work had meaning, that there was structure and clarity around their work, that the people they worked with were dependable. You know, that was really important. Can the people, you know, the people I work with, can I count on them to, you know, do their job and watch my back? But the number 1 far and away thing was that there was an environment of psychological safety, which can really be defined as simply as people feeling safe to fail in front of each other. And that's when you're going to get a really high-performing team. The obvious, or maybe not so obvious, tie-in to diversity and inclusion and our work, and really what I think we offer as, you know, as people involved in diversity and inclusion work, and kind of leading by bringing our full selves to work, is creating that psychological safety. That's really the core of our work. So how do we make our workplaces safe for everybody? So we talked about being on autopilot. So autopilot can be in our own lives. Autopilot can also be in our relationships. I'm having a conversation with Jessie, and I'm acting like I'm having a conversation with Jessie, and I'm looking at her picture on my monitor right now, but really I'm thinking about, oh, thank God Chrissy isn't continuing to bark, and that the neighbors are, maybe going to do their laundry later, and I'm distracted and I'm less aware, and I'm acting based on habit patterns and assumptions. So if mindfulness is moving from autopilot to aware for ourselves, empathy is moving from autopilot to awareness of others. So how do we become fully aware and give our full attention to others? So we're going to practice that with a listening exercise. But first, I'm going to give us yet another micro practice that we can use. So empathy, like the other emotional intelligence skills, is trainable. And so this is a empathy micro practice. So this can be useful if we are about to pick up the phone and have a conversation. Maybe it's a conversation that we don't want to have with someone that we're in conflict with. Is a very good application for this. But this is a great way to kind of refocus our attention on who we are about to be in conversation with or be present with. So it can be one person or it can be a team. It's done on 3 breaths. So as in comedy, the magic number in mindfulness is 3. So we take the same micro practice on 3 breaths. So what I'd like you to do is, if you're not already in gallery view on your split screen, go ahead and put your gallery view on. If you don't have your webcam on, you can turn your webcam on. I really love seeing people, so it definitely helps me. So thank you for all of you brave souls who've had your webcam on the whole time. But just pick a person. And if you'd like, you can pin their video. If you don't know how to do that, it's not important. But if you do know how to do that, just go ahead and pick a person and pin their video. And just consider this other person that you're looking at. And as you do this, you can continue looking at the person, or you can gently close your eyes. Just bringing in a breath, settle the mind. With the second breath, see a similarity. This is another person who cares about creating workplaces where everybody belongs. And with the third breath, offering kindness to this person. May they be happy, may they be healthy, may they be safe. So just to cement the practice, let's try it one more time without me talking through it. Just trying it on your own with 3 breaths. Okay. So just holding that practice of paying attention to another person, we're going to move into breakout rooms again. So pardon me being distracted for a minute while I pull the breakout room bar over here. I'm going to recreate the rooms. And so let me see, we've got 69 people. So this is actually really good. We're going to be able to do this in pairs. So this is going to actually work out really well. So go ahead and ignore the next slide that I'm about to show, because I thought we were going to have, we had 200 people register, so I thought we were going to have to turn this into an exercise with 4 people. So it actually works better in 2s or 3s. So let me first talk about what mindful listening is. So in mindful listening, there is a person who is talking, and there's a person who's listening. So in mindful listening, listening means not talking. So there will be a person A, and there will be a person B, and maybe a person C. There'll be a few groups of 3. And you're each going to have 3 minutes to speak on a prompt, and I'm going to show you what the prompt is. You don't have to worry about that. And the entire 3 minutes belongs to the person who is speaking. So if you are person B, you're simply bearing witness to that person. If the person who is speaking stops talking after 30 seconds, remain in silence. And notice if that's uncomfortable or weird, or if you have feelings about that. But the entire 3 minutes belong to the person who is speaking. And what may happen is that person may sit for 30 seconds and then say, oh, and then there's this other thing. And that may be the thing that's actually very rich and very profound. So that is the mindful listening exercise. It can be really difficult, especially for problem solvers or people who feel like they have to fill the space by saying something. I, by the way, am one of those people. So there will be a person A and a person B. There may be a person C. You will each have 3 minutes. I will put a prompt in the breakout room, so you'll see a chat prompt when it's time to switch. When it is time to switch, simply take a breath and move to the next person. Person A will be whoever is closest to the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. So if you live in San Francisco, you won't have to like go, oh, we're both in San Francisco. So whoever's closest to the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco will be person A. And then person A, if you're in a group of 3, will choose who goes next. So are there any questions before I put you into this conversation? These are your prompts. The prompts are, what's surprising to me lately in my life is, life's been full of surprises lately, the kind of person I want to be is. How do we want to show up differently when we go back to our work and our lives, or anything else that you want to talk about? So I'm going to go ahead and recreate the rooms. And we actually had a few people who apparently didn't want to do the exercise who left. So I need to recreate the rooms once more. All right, so it looks like everyone should be in a room. And so I'm going to give everybody 9 minutes. And so please, when it is time to close, please do wrap up quickly and move to the next person. If you're in a group of 2, you'll have time for free flow conversation. If you're in a group of 3, the third person will go with that last 3 minutes. And Eli, maybe you asked that question before I showed the prompts in the window. So yeah, it can be anything you want. And if someone doesn't want to speak at all, you can just simply sit for 3 minutes. All right, off we go. Okay. Welcome back.
Bye.
Nice meeting you.
You too.
Welcome back, folks. All right. And is everybody back? All right. And Madeline, if you can start the recording again. For some reason, I have lost the ability to see the other folks in the room. Can everyone still see me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, then I will just, I don't know why, but I can't, I don't know where my little thing is to be able to see. Oh, there it is. It was hiding under another window. Yay. Because I really, really liked being able to see your faces. So yeah, so just in the chat, you know, what was that like? What was that like to do that mindful listening exercise? What was that like? Cathartic, yeah. Great. Incredible and humbling. Vulnerable, yeah. Can be very vulnerable. Empathy. Well, that's good, because that's part of the exercise. Active listening, so it was hard at first. That just took the opportunity to have a free-form conversation. All right. It was raw. Yeah, all right. It's hard not to interject a verbal affirmation. Yeah, it really is. It really can be hard, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so these are really common comments. Is it can be really strange, to actually give our full attention to another person. It can also be very strange to actually be given that gift of someone else's full attention, and can feel strange. And what happens a lot that people are surprised by is sometimes that will be that thing where the person who's speaking has stopped, and then there will be something more. So this is a really interesting practice to try in stealth mode. So I encourage some of you as homework to maybe in the next conversation that you have, just make a decision that you are going to mindfully listen to whoever is talking to you without interrupting, and giving them space and giving them the gift of your attention, and bringing that same practice of bringing your attention back to conversation. The key takeaway really is remember how it feels to truly connect with others, because this is really about moving from autopilot to aware to connected. So these are the practices that we've covered today. And this presentation is available. These files are available to you in the Pathable app. So these are the practices that we talked about today. Is the practice of taking 3 breaths, the mindful breathing, mindful listening, and the shift to connection practice. Shift to connection can be really useful as we enter into a staff meeting or an interaction, and it can be really useful for those that we may be in conflict with. In summary, we're living in a VUCA world, and we need some skills, right? And so mindfulness and emotional intelligence can come in really handy, especially the emotion regulation part, which I did not cover today because we only had 90 minutes. Mindfulness is simply the movement from being on autopilot to being aware. Awareness of others that's how we create that connection and empathy, and find ways to practice both integrated and dedicated. So an integrated practice can be setting a timer on your phone for 1 minute, and as a team, beginning your team meeting with a minute to just sit and fully arrive for that interaction. So what are some next steps? So there are a ton of books that have been written about these topics. So this is a few of them. Search Inside Yourself is, of course, a good book. If you are really want to nerd out on the science of mindfulness and really kind of find out, you know, what's actually real science and what's Dr. Phil and pop culture, Altered Traits is a really good book to really kind of go into, you know, what is the neuroscience of mindfulness. John Kabat-Zinn's book, Mindfulness for Beginners, I started to read it and I was like, wow, this is really for beginners. So it's great for beginners. So I think that would be it's a really good, accessible book. And there are a ton of apps out there. Insight Meditation Timer is one that I use. And it's the most popular, but I have a lot of people I know who use Headspace and use Calm. I'll also send a shout out for Wise at Work, which is put out by Wisdom Labs. And so what's nice about Wise at Work is it is specifically built from the ground up for people who work in corporate environments. So it's a premium app, but they actually have things like 7 days before the big presentation and, you know, meditations for that. You know, meditations to do before your performance review. So it's very specific and geared towards, and it's also very science-based. It was actually founded by the current CEO of Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. So it's a premium app, but it's excellent. In the PowerPoint are some links to other resources. So there's SIYLI resources for resilience. My friend Maru Kim at Facebook started this crowdsourced self-care library. There's a ton. It's amazing how many different people have put resources and links and articles into this Google Doc. So you can go ahead and access that. And any of you are welcome to reach out to me just with comments or questions, or if you're interested in bringing SIY into your company. Please reach out to me about that too. So with that, we've run over just a couple minutes. I apologize for doing that. I will stay in the room till 10 minutes after, when we will all be booted out if you want to ask a question or say hello. But just as we leave, let's leave by simply taking one breath. So there was an interview with this guy, Meng, who started SIY at Google and experienced practitioner. This guy's like hung out with the Dalai Lama. And the last question he was asked in this interview that he did for the people in teacher training was, what's your favorite practice? And he said his favorite practice, and I was waiting for him to say sitting with the Dalai Lama, of course. His answer was one breath. One breath. Simply sitting and taking one breath. So let's do that now together. Simply sitting. Thank you for your attention.